Now we're on to part 2, the method. So far we've talked about the basic metaphysics. Now, I admit it was a thumbnail sketching pretty fast, but like I said before, if you go through the book and you go through the audio CD on it, it begins to finally make sense to you more and more the more you hear it. You don't have to believe it. I only ask you to comprehend it. It'll prove itself to you as time goes by. Now, after laying down this metaphysics, which would be incomplete if it was supposed to be only about metaphysics, but it's complete enough to go on to our true goal, which was to show the relationship of this to healing. So I call Chapter 7, The Connection to Healing. Now, I'm starting with a quote by a unique healer and osteopath and doctor, Dr. Fritz Frederick Smith. He says, in the world of duality, there are different laws of nature than in the world of unity. I think this is fascinating because it's well said. It shows the paradox of existence. It shows that we actually are living two things at once. We can live in unity and we can live in diversity all at the same time. And that's what he's saying here. Basically that whatever level of consciousness you're at, you're going to experience a different set of laws. I often talk about Jesus walking on the water. He's in unity because there's no water to walk upon for him. He's walking on himself, being in unity. And Peter tunes into it and walks on the water towards him until he loses faith in his own perception and starts to go under. But in the disciples that remained in the boat, remained in duality. So they were experiencing duality all the time. Therefore, they better stay in that boat because the level of consciousness they're at is they're not even going to make it half as far as Peter did, let alone Jesus, who was actually in unity. Now, based on what Dr. Fritz said and a few other things about life, we could say that from the human perspective, we could say everything that is energy, our vibration, our invisible, is what we'll call energy. But in a sense, we could say everything's energy, right? Because the physical world's energy, sound is energy. Really, see, for the ancients, energy is the word we use today for the word that they use for sound, or word. Because everything vibrates. Now, we could say that everything is energy, our vibration. However, if we say that, we cannot say anything else. Thus, it's nothing to talk about. Thus, it is easier to divide the universe and the human being into two categories, visible and invisible. We can borrow from modern physics the current model of light, known as the wave-particle theory. Light behaves as both a wave and a particle. As a wave, our vibration, it is invisible. As a particle, it can be seen and measured. This is true. This is how the universe works. A holographic universe, or holograms, or holograph. Now, unity and duality. If we go to the Chinese model, first there is the unity, which we've already talked about in the esoteric occult model. This unknown unity of all things, as the Chinese might express it. Now, from there, a point of creation comes, the duality of the relationship between the opposites, which we've already talked about. The particle wave theory could easily be put on this schematic. The particle wave theory of physics clearly expresses this. Our physical body is tangible, concrete, while our energy body is invisible and less concrete. All right? So, for the sake of discussion, what we're really saying here, what I'm trying to tell you, is let's just say whatever tangible, this is what I do in my therapy classes that I teach bodywork in, whatever tangible, whatever real, whatever we can measure physically, we'll call a particle, our yin, the solid. Whatever wave, invisible, we can't see, like thoughts and things like that, we'll call that the invisible. Okay, so we'll call that energy, and the other one we'll just call matter. So wave, particle. It's that kind of division. It makes it easier to talk when we're working on the physical plane with people. But of course, we know that's only a convention. That's not how it is. Everything is energy. Now, in the chart that I have here, structure and energy, I have unity. Then I have the old saying, let there be light. Then there's particle on the left, wave on the right. So a particle could be structure versus energy, matter versus movement, form versus vibration, mass versus force, text versus texture versus consciousness, organization versus spirit, tangible versus thoughts, which are basically intangible, palpable versus thoughts, because what is palpable is touching, and concrete versus belief systems. Okay, so what we have here then is an energy model that we can work with. So let's call the invisible bodies of man the energy body. And let's call the physical bodies of man the matter or physical side. So you have energy and matter. Now, having said that, I'm going to use some of the theories of a practice called zero balancing, which I discovered on my own and thought I had invented it, but then I realized the cosmic mind knows everything, and it turns out that actually it had already been invented by Dr. Fritz Frederick Smith, so that's fine. So I took some classes from that institute, and I was grateful for it. All they did was reinforce what I already knew, but that's okay, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, based on that, I'm going to use the energy model of working with a human being, because we've talked about all these metaphysics. Let's talk about really working with the person. If you can't just work with the physical, you can't just work with the energy. That's my point. If you get into the invisible work where you do these people that do energy healing, which I do, and they send energy from one hand to the other like a magnetic field, you can sometimes resolve issues that are even physical. Other times it takes physical work for the energy body to actually resolve itself. So it's good to work holistically and to be willing to do the grunt work or the physical work, and at the same time do the energy work. Okay? Now, in the energy model I'd like to talk about, there's three flows of chi. Chi is universal energy. We have prana, we have chi. This is what the ancients called life force, or in the West we would call it the Holy Spirit. And it has many gradients to it. Now, the three main flows of chi in the model I'm using, there would be the vertical flow, and the internal flows and the background energy. The vertical flows have two subcategories, one called universal life flow, another one called secondary universal flow. The internal flows have three subcategories: deep level, which goes into the skeleton, soft tissue, which flows through the organs, and superficial, which is like a wei chi or a protection chi that sort of goes through the just barely below the skin. And then you have this background auric energy that we've talked about already in the Constitution of Man. Now, what's interesting, I'm going to use the zero balancing model because I think it's a body-mind type of model for therapy. But in reality, you have different types of therapists. You have people like, let's say, Paul St. John, who works mainly in the physical realm and works on fatigued muscles that have trigger points or knots in them and things like that, and he physically works them out, doing trigger point release and other unique practices. Then you have people who do, like Julie Motz, who do nothing but energy work. They just are psychic, they hold their energy there, and they go deep into the person's psychic past and also come up with great releases in the person's health. And then you have people who do body-mind, who do both together, which really everybody's doing whether they know it or not, but people who are more conscious of it, and that might be Dr. Fritz Frederick Smith with zero balancing, of course. It would be John Upledger with craniosacral therapy, a magnificent therapy, where you take the cranial bones and with energy you just move the bones to move the fascia to release the dura, which is helps release the cerebral spinal fluid and can contribute to unbelievable miracle healings. It's fascinating work. Now, in the energy model, I'd like to talk about energy in joints because I'm going to use the zero balancing model, which concentrates on accessing the energy that comes through the bones. I'd like to just talk about that. So I'm going to use that model because we could go on in hundreds of models. I got to pick one, so I'm going to go with the zero balancing energy model. Now, the energy in this model goes through the joints. It can go bone to bone. Okay, it can cross a joint, bone to bone, or it can go ligament to ligament, or it can go soft tissue to soft tissue. Now, what Dr. Fritz and other workers had discovered, and I myself found this out without anybody telling me, but the higher self apparently, was that the energy that goes through the bones is like a 210 line compared to a 110 going through the soft tissues. And it was fascinating to find that out. I was overwhelmed with that uniqueness, and it has some unique side effects, like when you access that energy, the vertical flows, it actually has side effects to realign the energy body with the dense physical body. Even though it's all energy, we're dividing it up for the sake of communication. Okay, so the dense body can be realigned with the energy body by doing a curved pull or a focus, which is really a vortex, a Leah point. See how it ties together? And it has the side effect of actually releasing soft tissue dysfunction, as well as realigning the energy body and the physical body together, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, the vertical flows, this is what I'd like to talk about mainly. These vertical flows, I believe, come from the solar deity through the higher self, down through the human being, into the bones. They sort of nail you to the earth like a lightning rod. Now, there are three main flows. The first one runs from the cranial bones, the spinal column through the pelvis, the femur, the tibia, through the tarsal bones, all the way to the earth. The second flow runs a similar path, except that it starts at the transverse processes of the spinal column before entering the legs down to the earth. And then at the same time, the third energy path runs through the bones and starts at the clavicle sternum joint right in here, and actually moves through each of the arms. Now, I've experienced all of them. They're all there. What happens with these energies is that they go through the bones and ground you and keep you oscillating at the right vibration. And the ones in the arms are less, I would say, there's less viscosity in the arms as there are in the spinal column, and there's even more thicker energy in the actual bones. When you feel this energy, it feels like molasses moving through a tube very slowly. It's unique, but of course it moves faster in the thinner bones like the arms. Now, the internal flows we were talking about, the deep ones that are in the bones, you see this when a person's walking, it's in their gait. And this is a internal. It doesn't come from the outside. It's intraphysical. It's within the bones, within the person. It's not like the dynamic flows that come from outside the body, let's say from the solar system through the higher self to the bones. And then you have the middle flows, which is where you get your Chinese, what you would call your meridian systems, you know, the stomach going down like that, and the stomach meridian where the acupuncture points are put in. These are subphysical and actually correlate with the fascia system, which is just below the skin where the fascia system begins. And then finally you have these superficial flows, which are right underneath the skin also, and they are like a Wei Qi, it's called. There are many Qis in Chinese medicine, but the Wei Qi is like an armor Qi. It keeps germs out, it protects you, things like that. As long as Wei Qi is strong, everything is working really well in your body, and that's the way it should be. Okay. Now, around this again, I'm just reiterating in bodywork terms, these things we talked about in metaphysics. You have background energy, which is you'll call it the aura of the earth if you want, and then you have your aura integrating with the aura of the earth. And this aura is like an egg that surrounds the dense body and is known in occultism, as I said before, as the ring pass knot. It's a protector and helps to interface the energy in the energetic environment. Psychics can actually read these auras, and many people do. They actually reflect our pictures like a TV screen does of what we're thinking. And somebody who's clairvoyant or even intuitive or consensate can actually pick up, even at the lowest levels, that picture from your aura to their aura, and they're reading it within their own aura, your reflection, which is which all it is there's just seeing things that you already know, but it's not like they're knowing things without you. They're reading your aura. That's one level of clairvoyance. Now, this all becomes fascinating because in the Indian model of this energy that flows through you, you have energy that goes through the crown chakra. You have the 7 chakras. You have the third eye chakra. You have the throat chakra, the heart chakra, the solar plexus chakra, the belly chakra, and the root chakra. Okay, very down at the bottom of the spine. Now, these chakras are really wheels. It means spinning circle. They're wheels that turn around, things like that. And these root chakras are where the Kundalini energy sits, that sometimes Shaktipa gurus will help you lift this energy all the way on up to your crown chakra, which unifies the lower self with the divine monad. But that can be also dangerous for people who aren't ready for that, because it can cause death or insanity. So it's nothing you fool around with, but it's nothing to fear, because it can happen naturally, which is the way it probably should happen for most people. Anyway, in modern day occultism, we really want to bring the higher energy down and the lower energy up to meet at the heart level and form in there the union of heaven and earth. Now, what's interesting is that the shape of the actual spinal cord, which is an S kind of a shape, a couple S's in there, sort of reiterates the way the energy flows through the bones in Dr. Fritz's work on zero balancing, because what happens is as the energy flows, just like going down a river and you're rowing and rowing, every time you go around a curve, you pick up speed, you get gyration, you get generation, you know. And what finally happens here is that you can actually access that energy by taking a person's limbs, putting a curved pull on those limbs, and actually access that energy as it jumps from one joint to the other, and causing it to create a clearer, stronger field of health in that part of the body. Anyway, I'd like to put this all together. So putting this all together now, if you look, I put this little chart in for you that says putting it all together. You have here, in fact, it is the vertical flows and other spiritual origins, where they come from, that the chakras are energy centers that download the energy information to the meridian system, which is the Chinese system, which interfaces with the etheric body and the fascial system, or fascia system of the physical body. Now this is important, because what I'm giving you here is Jacob's ladder in the healing way. What I'm saying here is that the energy that flows from the Atma Buddhi Mana, okay, which is really about an arm's length above your head, coming in through your spinal column, just like these dynamite flows do, and going through all your bodies, and then feeding the chakras that spin around that are connected to the dynamic flows that come down through your spinal cord. And from there, these chakras feed the etheric body, which is feeding the subphysical etheric energy channels of the meridian system of the Chinese, and finally interfaces with the fascia system. And the fascia itself, which is a system we'll talk about more in the next chapter, is all through the body. It's a liquid form. It's liquid and it's not liquid. It goes through various stages, but it's the glue of the body. It has 3 layers to it, and it's a fascinating subject because it is believed by some to be the original conductor of psychic and chemical, electrical energy. So that the fascia system itself at certain times can actually transfer neurological signals without the nervous system. And when it's fully hydrated, it becomes an interface between the etheric body, which is the first body above the physical, and the physical body. It's as if the fascia, when it becomes smooth through body work and gluey and warm and smooth, becomes an interface between energy and what we call matter in the physical plane with our senses. It becomes the ectoplasm of the etheric cosmos. Thank you very much.